There was a time in my life when I believed consciousness was something you had, something static, something you were born with. I was wrong. Consciousness is something you inhabit. And most human beings, without ever realizing it, live their entire lives moving in and out of different levels of consciousness. Like floors in a forgotten temple, they never learned how to explore. Tonight I want to take you inside that temple. Not as a lecturer, not as a philosopher, but as someone who has walked both the lower chambers and the higher halls, and lived to tell the difference. As you listen, don't analyze these words. Let them move through you. Because if you are hearing this now, it is not accidental. Lower consciousness and higher consciousness are not moral labels. One is not bad, the other good. They are states of perception. They determine how you see reality, how you interpret events, and ultimately how you create your life. Lower consciousness is reactive. Higher consciousness is creative. Lower consciousness is unconscious living. Higher consciousness is intentional living. And the tragedy is this. Most people believe their life is happening to them, when in truth it is happening through them. Lower consciousness is not stupidity. Some of the most intelligent people I've ever met lived almost entirely in it. Lower consciousness is identification with the surface of life. In this state, you react before you reflect. You believe every thought you think. You confuse emotion with truth. You see the world as something outside of you, acting upon you. It is a state ruled by habit, fear, memory, and impulse. Let me give you an image. Lower consciousness is like living inside a storm, while believing the storm is the sky. Every thought feels urgent. Every emotion feels final. Every problem feels permanent. When someone insults you, you become the insult. When money is tight, you become scarcity. When fear appears, you believe danger is real and immediate. In lower consciousness, the mind is a tyrant. Thoughts arise automatically, often inherited from parents, society, or trauma. And you mistake them for yourself. You say, "This is just who I am." But what you are really saying is, "I have never questioned the voice in my head." You see it when you replay old arguments in your mind long after they are over. You imagine worst-case scenarios and feel them as if they are real. You blame circumstances, people, or fate for how you feel. You chase pleasure to escape discomfort, then feel empty again. Lower consciousness seeks control externally because it has no control internally. It tries to dominate the world because it has never mastered the mind. And here is the occult truth. Few speak aloud. Whatever you repeatedly imagine and emotionally accept, you invite into form. Lower consciousness creates unconsciously and then calls it fate. Higher consciousness begins the moment you realize, "I am not my thoughts. I am the awareness observing them." This realization alone changes everything. Higher consciousness is presence. It is the ability to stand one step back from thought, one step back from emotion, and choose response instead of reaction. In higher consciousness, you observe before you act. You recognize thought as a tool, not a master. You understand imagination as a creative force. You see reality as participatory, not random. You stop living at the mercy of the inner weather. You become the sky. I remember the first time I truly tasted higher consciousness. Nothing mystical happened on the outside. No visions, no thunder. But inside, something quieted. A thought arose, one that would normally have triggered fear, and for the first time I didn't follow it. I watched it. And in that moment I understood something ancient. Thoughts are suggestions, not commands. That single insight was worth more than any book I had ever read. Higher consciousness. In everyday life, higher consciousness looks surprisingly ordinary, but it feels profound. It looks like pausing before reacting to an insult, choosing silence instead of proving a point, feeling emotion without becoming it, responding to problems with clarity instead of panic. When money challenges appear, you don't collapse into fear. You observe, plan, and imagine solutions. When someone triggers you, you ask, "What in me is being touched?" You stop outsourcing your power. You realize the outer world is a mirror, and the mind is the brush, painting the reflection. The occult key: imagination and reality. Here is what the ancients knew and guarded carefully. Imagination is the womb of creation. Lower consciousness imagines unconsciously, driven by fear, memory, and repetition. Higher consciousness imagines deliberately, guided by intention, feeling, and awareness. When you imagine from lower consciousness, you create from lack. When you imagine from higher consciousness, you create from alignment. This is why mastery of the mind is not optional. It is the difference between being a victim of circumstance and becoming a conscious participant in destiny. Higher consciousness is not achieved. It is practiced. Here is how you begin. First, observe your thoughts. Do not fight them. Do not suppress them. Simply watch. Awareness dissolves unconsciousness. Second, question emotional reactions. Ask, is this response necessary or habitual? Third, use imagination intentionally. Before sleep, imagine the feeling of peace, clarity, confidence, not the struggle. The subconscious listens in images and emotion. Fourth, return to the present moment. Higher consciousness lives now. Lower consciousness lives in regret and anxiety. And finally, be patient with yourself. Awakening is not a dramatic event. It is a gentle remembering. Make no mistake. There is a war within you, not between good and evil, but between awareness and automation. Lower consciousness wants comfort, certainty, and control. Higher consciousness wants truth, growth, and freedom. And every day you choose. With your attention, with your imagination, with your response. You were never meant to be ruled by your mind. You were meant to use it. The moment you realize you can step out of unconscious patterns, the moment you choose awareness over reaction, the moment you imagine deliberately instead of fearfully, you rise. Higher consciousness is not above life, it is within it. And the more you return to it, the more life begins to respond differently to you. Have faith in this process. Study yourself, refine your awareness, because the greatest journey you will ever take is the journey from unconscious living to conscious creation. And you have already begun.